Hello there, thrill seekers. I was asked about the difference between Soto and Rinzai, and I am planning to do a video with Shozan Jack Halbner, who I know as Gento, who is a Rinzai Zen monk who wrote a couple of books, a Single White Monk, and what the hell was the other one called? In German it was called Zen Berserker. Oh gosh. Anyway, I'm going to post a picture of the other book on here because it's just escaping my mind right now what it's called, but you'll see the picture of it, and that'll tell you what it's called. Anyway, so I'm going to do a video with him, and we're going to talk about the differences between Soto and Rinzai, and I'm really interested to hear what he has to say. But we won't be, he's in Vienna, so we're not going to be able to coordinate our schedules for a while. It'll probably be a month or more before we get it done. So I'm going to do a short little video now about it. So let me just start off by doing the kind of junior high school book report thing and quote to you from the Shambhala Dictionary of Buddhism, ... and Zen. Now, I am ordained in the Soto school of Zen Buddhism, and here's what they have to say about that. Soto school. With the Rinzai school, one of the two most important schools of Zen in Japan, it belongs to the Gokei Shichishu, I don't know what that is, and was founded by the great Chinese Chan or Zen master Tungshan Liang Chie, or in Japanese Tozan Ryokai, and his student Tsaoshan Penchi, or in Japanese Sosan Honjaku. So that's how they get the names. It's So-To, so Tozan and Sozan. The school was named after, I just told you that. In the first half of the 13th century, the tradition of the Soto school was brought to Japan from China by the Japanese Zen master Dogen Zenji. There, Soto Zen, along with Rinzai, is one of the two principal transmission lineages of Zen still active today. While the goal of training in the two schools is basically the same, Soto and Rinzai Zen differ in their training methods. Though even here the line differentiating the two schools cannot be sharply drawn. In Soto Zen, Mokusho Zen, and thus shikantaza, is more heavily stressed. Mokusho is one of these words I've heard, but it's not the one I'm most familiar with. I'm more familiar with shikantaza. In Rinzai, Kana Zen and Koan practice is more stressed, I guess. In Soto Zen, the practice of Dokusan, one of the most important elements of Zen training, has died out since the middle of the Meiji period. That, when I read that last night, was news to me, but it does kind of make sense. The teachers, the Soto Zen teachers I know of in the United States tend to practice Dokusan, but Nishijima Roshi in Japan did not. So Dokusan is a private meeting one-on-one with your teacher, and I usually do it in retreats and things. So let's see what they have to say about Rinzai. Rinzai school. One of the most important schools of Chan Zen. It originated with the great Chinese Chan master Lin Chi Yi Swan, in Japanese Rinzai Gigen, and was one of the Gokei Shinchishu. Gokei Shichishu. I have to go look that up and find out what that is, but it's probably not that important. At the beginning of the 11th century, the Rinzai school split into two lineages, blah blah blah. The Rinzai school is one of the two schools of Zen still active in Japan. At the end of the 12th century, Eisai Zenji brought Rinzai Oryo Zen to Japan and was one of the teachers of Dogen. But it doesn't say that here, but that's true. It was the first school of Zen to reach Japan, however it soon died out. The Rinzai Zen that was to flourish anew in Japan was that deriving from the Chinese and Japanese masters of the strict Rinzai Yogi lineage. See, there's something I didn't know. This lineage produced great Zen masters like Ben-e, Shomyo, etc., you probably don't care, who in the early period of Zen in Japan made the essential contributions to the spread of spiritual training. Wow, they got a lot more on Rinzai in here than they do on Soto. And they mentioned later Zen masters. The only ones I'm real familiar with are Ikkyu and Hakuin, so maybe I'll mention them later. In the Rinzai school, primarily Kana Zen and thus Koan practice are stressed as an especially fast way to the realization of enlightenment, or Kensho or Satori. The Soto school, the other school of Zen still active today, more heavily stresses shikantaza. Okay. So, that's the dictionary definitions of the two. Usually I differentiate them by saying that Soto is the good school of Zen and Rinzai is the evil one. So that's another easy way to remember it. Now I'm going to try to tell you what I know from sort of more personal experience with Soto and Rinzai. I have never studied Rinzai style Zen in earnest. My first teacher, Tim McCarthy, did study with Joshu Sasaki Roshi, who was a Zen master in the Rinzai lineage, but I'm not sure how long. I don't think he was with Sasaki Roshi for a long time, and I believe Tim's first teacher was also in the Rinzai lineage. Now, that would make sense because the Rinzai school sort of got to America first, but then the Soto school was better at establishing itself as a thing. So the Soto school, the San Francisco Zen Center is part of the Soto lineage, and they got, much bigger and had a network of temples and stuff like that. The Rinzai lineage first came to America, most notably with D.T. Suzuki, and a few other people came over earlier than the Soto teachers. So our first exposure as Americans to Zen was the Rinzai style. The Rinzai style. So a lot of the cliches that you hear about Zen from people are based on the Rinzai style Zen that they read about in books by D.T. Suzuki, and also Alan Watts studied more in Rinzai style Zen. Now, if you go to a place and you wonder if it's Soto or Rinzai, the best way to figure that out is see which way they face when they are meditating. So in the Soto style, when we sit Zazen, we face the wall. In the Rinzai style, they face the center of the room, or you could say they face each other. My own teacher, Nishijima Roshi, who was a Soto guy, criticized this, saying that he felt this encouraged a competitive attitude towards Zen. So when everybody's facing each other, you can all see what everybody else is doing, and that this fostered a kind of competitive style. This may, we can ask Gento, Shozan Jack Haubner, if he thinks there's anything to this, but it does kind of make sense because the Rinzai style does tend to have, and again, this is kind of coming from me who studies in the Soto style, so take it with a grain of salt, but it does tend to have a kind of competitive feeling about it, where people are trying to have an experience of Satori or Kensho, an experience of enlightenment, whereas in the Soto school, there's no push to try to experience anything, really. Another way you can tell when you're looking at a person is the sleeves. So hang on a sec. Bing! There I am. A magic trick in my robe. This robe that is the one I tend to prefer to wear is actually a Rinzai style robe, which means the sleeves, as you can see, are quite long by standards of what we usually think of as sleeves, but in Zen sleeve term, they're short. And I have some pictures. My Soto robes, sorry I keep messing this up, my Soto robes are in storage and I don't have access to them right now, but I've got a couple of pictures and I don't know if you can see the length of the sleeves in these pictures. Maybe you can. And then here's a picture of my friend Peter Roca, and he's kind of holding up his arm so you can see the sleeve there, and you can see that it's considerably longer than the one that I am wearing. Although, yeah, these are long too. So I don't know why that is, but in Rinzai they tend to wear the sleeves that are shorter. And the reason for these sleeves is to carry stuff. So this was a way to carry things, supplies, whatever you needed back in the old days. I don't know why maybe the Soto people like to carry more stuff in their sleeves than the Rinzai people. I don't know why they have a longer sleeve. Another difference that you will find is mentioned in the Shambhala Dictionary of Buddhism and Zen, which is that in the Rinzai style they do the Koan practice. And both styles of Zen use koans. Koans are short teaching stories that are part of the Zen tradition. But in the Rinzai style, they tend to... This is actually something that was given to me. This is a copy, obviously, of what they used to use in the Mount Baldy Zen Center. This is Mumonkan, and this is their koan collection that they study. And you are supposed to read these koans and then concentrate on them, and then come to your teacher with a response to them. Sometimes the koans are distilled in the Rinzai lineage down to just questions, like what was the shape of your face before your parents were born? That's a very common one. The first one most people get is the Koan Mu, which is, does a dog have Buddha nature? Somebody asks Zen Master Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature? And Master Joshu says Mu. But what Master Joshu actually said, and I love pointing this out, is Wu, because that's how you pronounce that character in Chinese, in the Chinese that Master Joshu spoke. And that is, that's a little pun. So Wu means nothing, no, or nothingness or emptiness, but it also sounds like a dog barking. So there you go. That's one thing. Also, another difference you would notice superficially is kinhin. Kinhin is a style of walking meditation that is usually done between 2 periods of sitting meditation as a kind of way to give your legs a break. In the Soto style, we walk like this, or sometimes like this. I think Kodo Sawaki preferred going like this, but Nishijima Roshi, in his, as far as I remember, did this. Anyway, it's just two ways of holding your hands. But the point is, I think both schools do this or this, but in the Soto style, you walk very, very slowly. Like so slowly, it looks like you're not even moving sometimes. In the Rinzai style, they walk fast. They go really fast, and instead of going around and around the room, which we do in the Soto style, they'll often go in zigzags or go outside and walk up a mountain and do all kinds of stuff, but that's a difference in the way they do that. Now, let's see. Dogen was very fond of certain teachers who are usually counted in the Rinzai school, and he was kind of critical of the very notion of the Rinzai school. There's a few snarky comments he makes in Shobo Genzo about those who call themselves the followers of Master Rinzai. But Dogen himself was very fond of Master Rinzai and quoted him often. He often quoted Obaku or Huangpo, who is often or is usually counted as part of the Rinzai lineage, Baso or Matsu. No, Baso or Mas. Baso is how I learned his name. I think Matsu is how you say it in Chinese. Anyway, Dogen quotes him a lot. So Dogen quoted a lot of teachers who are considered to be Rinzai teachers. So it wasn't that he rejected everything that the Rinzai said, but he wasn't a fan of the koan practice because he is very, very critical of a guy named Ta Hui, who is usually credited as the originator of that style of Koan Zen. However, Dogen lived and died long before Hakuin, and I believe, and maybe we can ask Gento this, that Hakuin is usually credited with the way it's done these days in Rinzai style Zen. This is above my pay grade. Also, I mentioned the attitude towards enlightenment. Dogen was originally schooled in Rinzai style Zen by the student of the guy who brought Rinzai style Zen to Japan. And he probably learned this idea that Zazen was for the purpose of attaining Satori or enlightenment, and then later he found a Soto teacher, Tendo Nyojo, who told him that Zazen is enlightenment itself, and that became Dogen's main thing. He said that Zazen itself is enlightenment. Now, I don't want to make this video immensely long, so I'm not going to go into the Sambo Kyodan in any length, but I should mention them because they are a lineage started by a guy, well, I usually think of it as being started by a guy named Yasutani Roshi, who was not that long ago, less than 100 years ago, I think. And it was supposed to be a hybrid of Soto and Rinzai, but every time I've encountered guys from the Sambo Kyodan lineage, it feels to me a lot like, you might as well call it Rinzai, because it looks like Rinzai Zen to me, except that they face the wall sometimes, and they like Dogen sometimes. That's all I really know about Sambo Kyodan. But I just thought I'd mention them. Anyway, that's the short tutorial. I don't know if you learned anything, but that's, those are the the main differences. And when I said one is good and one is evil, I don't mean that. In fact, as the Shambhala Dictionary of Buddhism and Zen says, the differences between the two are mostly superficial. That difference in attitude towards enlightenment, I think, is important. The rest of the differences aren't that important. I believe, as far as I know, they chant the same liturgy. You know, they chant the Heart Sutra and the same stuff that we chant in Soto or chanted in the Rinzai school. So most of it's just superficial differences. But there is that difference in attitude towards enlightenment. But again, I will give a caveat, because as far as I understand, a lot of Rinzai teachers have basically the same attitude towards enlightenment as Soto teachers, which is, it's something that comes and it's nice if it happens, but you know, it's not all that in a bag of chips. It's not the necessary thing. It's not the goal of practice. Anyway, there you go. Ziggy's digging around in the yard, so I better go attend to that. And if you want to donate to me studying more about Rinzai and Soto differences, you can go to the webpage or to the URL you're seeing on your screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main ways of making a living, and I really appreciate your support. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't got to donate if you don't want to donate. This is not really traditional to wear it over your clothes. I just did that for the video. We will see you again. Have a good time all the time. Ooh, that's really falling down. Bye, Zils. What's going on? What do you want, Ziggy? You don't like my robes? Alright, Ziggy. Are the robes scary? Do you like Soto or Rinzai best? Hey, does a dog have Buddha nature? Does a dog have Buddha nature? Ziggy, does a dog have Buddha nature? Oh God, he won't say anything. Ooh, that's his answer. Bye, Ziggy.